Okay, so we want to think about what is called the rhetorical situation. And that is a fancy way of thinking about the what, the why, and the who behind what it is that we want to say and what we want to write in our opinion piece. This is so crucial to identify prior to beginning drafting or brainstorming our actual writing, because thinking through this process of the what, why, and the who, or the rhetorical situation, will target and narrow your focus so that it is a very clear and impactful piece of opinion writing. So the first step in thinking about this is deciding, what is the event or the moment. Or it can be a series of events or a series of moments that either you have experienced firsthand at some point in your life, or that you're experiencing now, or that you're experiencing second or third hand. So let's say you listen to something on the news or in the media or in your social network feeds, and you are responding viscerally with that anger, with that feeling that this is not okay, that there is a problem. That second or third hand impact that you feel or connection that you feel to whatever it is that is happening is just as important and valid as if you were experiencing it firsthand. So you don't have to experience something firsthand in your life in order to write an opinion piece. We all have legitimate and authentic connections and opinions about things that we're experiencing. However, if you do have that personal event or personal moment or series of events or moments that you have experienced firsthand, I encourage you to dig deep and make yourself vulnerable as you feel you can in order to share that, because sharing your personal interaction with this problem and your personal response to it is very powerful. So what I'd like for you to decide is, and pinpoint very, very clearly in your head before we begin writing, is what has pushed you to think this way. And I really encourage you to think about moments or events. Again, something that you've heard on the news or something that you have experienced either firsthand or you've seen in your family or your community or in your friend group or in your school. Okay, so that is what we call the exigence. That is what we call the push to think and feel the way that you're feeling. And in thinking about this word exigence, you're really thinking about like the tipping point or the turning point, that moment of need, that moment of critical response or visceral feeling that you have. And in this right here, I like thinking of it as a juncture or a crossroads, right? Like you could have thought or gone one way, but instead you're reacting a different way. And that particular event or series of events have pushed you to think that way. So the why of your writing, why are you writing this piece, and the what are you saying, and the how and the who, to whom are you saying this to, who do you want to convince? Those are all so interconnected. It's not, you can't just have one of those in isolation. Having said that, the exercise on page 12 in your notebook is asking you to think about each of these separately so that then you can piece them together as a whole. And I'm sorry, that's on page 13. If you click here on this Google Doc, it's going to ask you to think through your rhetorical situation, your what, why, and who, the first step before you begin your writing stage. So if we see exigence as the why, right? Your moment or your series of moments that have pushed you to respond to this problem in a specific way. You can think about the Black Lives Matter protests across the world, right? The why of those protests, of those marches, of that racial reckoning is a different why than the civil rights of the 1960s with Dr. King. They're similar in some senses, but ultimately the push to protest, the push to march comes from different problems within the same topic of racism. We can mark the moment of exigence or the moment of why, that event, right, by maybe a series of events that have happened over the past 10 years. And then the reason why Black Lives Matter not only was formed, but also has grown so significantly. So a video like this on ABC News, and I will link it into your notebook, is powerful because people share their visceral truths and their why for why they're protesting. And I want you to think about, in similar terms, your why for your writing. Your writing is a sign of empowerment. Your writing as a sign of protest, as your opinion. So let's listen. And as you listen, what has pushed these speakers to respond in the way that they're responding?
I'm fighting for my kids' chance to be able to walk out in the street and be free. I'm fighting for my chance to walk out and not have to be paranoid. I'm fighting for my chance to actually feel protected by the people that are supposed to protect me.
We've lost Tony McDade, we've lost Breonna Taylor, we've lost George Floyd, Trayvon Martin. Anyone that you can see has been gone, and it's saddening. It is so saddening that people sit here and paint this picture of Black people that's not it.
We're here to stop the violence, the brutality against all Black people. That's men, that's women, that's gender non-conforming folks, that's our trans brothers and sisters and siblings. We are here for all of those reasons.
This is just repeating itself. Cops killing innocent Black men for no reason.
I don't want us to fear for our life every time we just walk out the door.
We don't believe in silence. Everybody should have a voice in this situation.
Because silence does equal death when we don't talk about race and its effect on our communities.
We remain silent about that. They're going to keep finding new ways to attack Black people in this country. And it's really just about time.
So if you think about, each person has that specific moment of truth and their reason for protesting. And similarly, think about your specific reason that equates very importantly to your focus of your opinion piece. You'll notice as you read other opinion pieces, and I encourage you to go through page 8 to click on these and read them. And as you read them, they're very short. And as you read them, note how specific their and narrow their focus is. It might be in response to the larger issue of racism. However, their specific message, right? What they want, of course, they want to end racism, right? But their specific message gets at a specific nuanced problem within that issue. So the more you read about that, the more you can understand that the more specific you are, the stronger opinion you will have. And so I'm a very visual person, and I want you to think about this for a minute. I picked up the first object I could find. And you have a fork, right? And stemming from this fork is the larger issue of what you're addressing. It could be racism. It could be specific forms of racism. It could be economic injustice, climate injustice. We have that, right? And then there's different strains or different threads following from that stem. And you could specifically count, right, on your fingers the different pieces of that main issue that that you could write about. And I want you to go directly into a specific thread, a specific branch of that issue, based on your own personal experience and your secondhand observation of what's happening. The more specific you are, again, the stronger you will be able to convince and persuade. The second piece of this what, why, and who, and I want to just zoom in here, that is crucial in beginning to think about your own writing, is remembering that your audience is on different levels of thinking, right? So there is the very specific audience of who you need to convince. And that's who I want you to write for. Your message and your tone and your sense of urgency will be a lot stronger if you're writing to convince. You're not writing to explain, and you're not writing to explain to people who are essentially who you're with in solidarity, right? You don't need to convince people who feel or think the way that you think in the same way, with the same urgency that you need to convince people who do not see what you see or feel or experience as the problem. So again, you're narrowing in to when you're speaking or writing your opinion piece to the specific target audience, the people that don't believe you, the people that are not on your side, the people who are not in solidarity with you on your issue and your problem. If you write from that perspective, the urgency to convince and move those hearts and minds, your opinion piece will be a lot stronger. Think about this on the left here. What do you want as the message, right? So the why that you heard in that brief video segment, right? That's the why, the moment of exigence, the moment of urgency, but it was very closely connected to the what. So the what and the why are sometimes very difficult to piece apart. And that's okay, but you want to be able to sit down and think through these questions. What do I want? Why do I want it? And if you have a broad response, such as, what do I want? I want peace. I'm going to push you to get more specific. Peace for what? For whom? What have you experienced? How do you know that peace does not already exist, right? And what have you experienced or seen or observed that illustrates that peace does not exist? And so really getting more specific than, I want peace, I want happiness, I want justice, equality. You have to narrow it down. And then thinking about the why do you want it, again, goes back to that inciting moment of exigence. And then who do I want to listen to what I have to say, right? Who am I getting to believe what I believe and feel what I feel? This last star, for whom am I speaking, is not as important, but thinking about, are you representing a group of people or a person and speaking for them, or are you speaking for yourself, or is it a bit of both? It's just something that can strengthen your piece a little bit more. But above and beyond here, the bottom, Plato's quote, it's not about explaining. You're not explaining your issue. You're writing everything to convince. Okay, it is an argument piece, essentially. Opinion writing is an argument piece. You don't need to explain yourself. You might have just a little bit of an explanation around evidence or data point, but your primary focus is to convince and persuade. And that is something that we'll talk more about when we write. And then you can see in the bottom right with this rhetorical situation, everything is interwoven together. But at the same time, I need you to think through the what, the why, and the who separately so that you can be clear before you write. So there is a chart in your notebook, the page after the rhetorical situation page. And I want to share with you one student's initial thinking, which is fantastic. But my feedback is get more specific. So with these questions, who are you writing to? How will you get their attention? Why do they need to hear you? So this person writes, I am writing to the citizens of America and the AAPI community. My feedback is choose the one audience that you need to convince. Do not choose the audience who is already seeing the issue or feeling the issue and with whom you're in solidarity as you write. It should be the one audience or group of people that do not see and do not hear and do not feel as you have felt. So finally, I wanted to show you as we get thinking through specifying your what, why, and who. This student wrote the big deal, right? What is the big deal about your topic or your problem? The big deal is many minorities are facing racial injustices, and these events keep appearing over and over again on the news and media. If we do not stop the hate now, I see a world of cruelty and discrimination. Yes, absolutely true. But I'm going to push you and this student to get more narrow. And I've asked these questions. Which minorities are you focusing on in your particular writing? So again, remember that fork, which I've dropped, but here it is. Remember the fork is here. Go into a specific, it's not that you don't believe the other prongs of that problem exist, but you're really focusing in on the one. What impact does the racial injustices you observe have on this particular group? So focusing on impact to a particular group of people, to yourself, to people you observe. So impact, but focusing in is very important. And then what will happen that should not happen because of these injustices, right? So what is the impact that really shouldn't be an impact? Is it possible to stop? So this person talked about stopping the hate, and I'm just pushing back. Is it possible to stop hate? Why or why not? How do we do that? And then I see a world of cruelty and discrimination. Yes, true, but dig deeper. Specify the cruelty, the types of cruelty. What does that look like? What does that feel like? What have you experienced or observed specifically from that moment of exigence? And discrimination, again, is this within your specific community? Is this something that you have observed with particular specificity in your life or have experienced? So that's what I want you to think about when you begin responding on page 13. And I really encourage you to use the Google Doc right here as that student did, because it's a nice space for you to dig into writing. Remember, everything you write, including this who, what, why inventory, you can drop directly into your op-ed. This is all pre-writing, and it's writing that you can use in your final piece, right? So that's the benefit of brainstorming at these different stages. Pull what this is all content that you're generating. So from here on out, we are generating content for our op-ed, but you must start here with the what, why, and the who. I hope this has helped you to focus in and get some clarity on the reasons why you're writing and speaking.